Hello, my name is Frank. I'm the creator of ELMixMasterPro. This is part 2 in a video series to review the features of ELMixMasterPro. Please use the in-app contact for feature requests and bug submissions instead of the comments in the YouTube video. Let's jump right into it. If you've already watched the mix tutorial, you're familiar with the subviews of the mix. The design view is the same way. It has a standard subview and a flavor detail subview. Go ahead and cover the standard subview. This is just a notes field. You can type in whatever you want. You have a flavor percentage override. This flavor percent is 16% of this recipe. We can override that to 10%. Over here to the mix, you can see that it shows the 16% is the original. We're currently mixing this at 10%. Next field is a steep field. This is a mappable field to your printer label. You can put, steep 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, whatever you want to put, and you can print it on your eJuice printer label. Version note. This is a little bit different than the regular note. This version note is just for this version. If you go up here to change versions, where it says no version notes, if I had a version note typed in there, it would show up in that location. I imported this recipe from eliquidrecipes.com. Author was Danny. If you click the Go button, it'll switch over to the web browser page and load the page of the original recipe. Here it is. OMFGV1. Great recipe. I dropped the percentage, changed it to watermelon candy, added some sweetener. I love it. Currently I'm version 1 of this recipe. I could change to version 2 if I wanted. Recipe ID doesn't really mean anything. It's an internal value used to keep track of the recipes. I have about 1,250 recipes in this recipe book. This is recipe number 6 in that list. Displays the last time I mixed this recipe, the total times that I've mixed it, and the milliliters that I've made. Almost 2,000 milliliters of this juice. We'll switch over to the flavor detail page. Before we go into it, I'm going to add a flavor, F-A, and I'm going to misspell it on purpose, A-P-L-E. It'll show up that it's not in stock. I can click the No button. These values after the name are values generated by this fuzzy search. I could remove them now. I left them for debugging purposes in the early days. Just never have gone back and removed it. So I'm going to click on Use on FA Apple. Boom, it shows back up. Go ahead and take this off. So it shows that the flavor is in stock, and it shows the milliliter. And for some reason, if you're pulling your flavors and you have less or more than what it shows on screen, you can just click the value. You can change it to whatever you want to change it to. Shows the date that the flavor was added to your flavor inventory. Also shows the flavor inventory of a flavor. I mix a lot of this juice. I buy the flavor in 4-ounce bottles, transfer it 30 mils at a time to my mixing station. So if you click on the view of the Juicy Peach, it'll actually open that flavor in the flavors page. You see that I have an inventory bottle. I've used 30 mils out of it. Whenever you transfer fluid from the inventory bottle to the primary bottle, it'll also break down the cost and transfer the cost over as well, and then the purchase date as well. Flavors on the right, if you double click one, it'll open that recipe in the design page. These are recipes that contain the flavor Juicy Peach. We'll cover the flavors in a different tutorial. The Add button will add the flavor to your flavor shopping list. It's just a placeholder while you're mixing. If you're like, oh, I need some more of that, just click Add. You can type in a milliliter that you want to order if you want. You don't have to. Switch over to the flavor shopping list. You can see that I added TFA Juicy Peach 725 11 milliliter. And I was viewing the peachy melon recipe at the time. Go ahead and remove that. Back over here to design. Switch back to our standard view. First up the list is we'll go ahead and do a search. If you type in whatever you want to search for, strawberry. I made the change and deleted it, but anyway, it prompted me to save it. I didn't have to. So now that I've done a search for strawberry, all of these recipes contain the flavor or the word strawberry in one of its names. So go ahead and clear that. Next is recipe actions. I can create a new recipe. I'm going to create one just called Apple Tester. I'm going to add a flavor art, apple. I always like to do this Control 2 from the flavor detail screen. Make sure I get the flavor names typed in correctly. I can rename this. Then I can adapt it. Whenever you adapt it, it'll create a copy of this recipe and append the word adapted to the recipe name. So let's go ahead and adapt it. Now I have another copy of this recipe, except it's just another copy. I don't need this, so I'm going to move it to my deleted recipe books. I can create a new version of this recipe. Let's switch back over to Flavor Attributes view. We're currently on version 1. I'm going to create a new version. Yes, create it. Look over here and we're now on version 2. So if we go over here to the change, the version menu is just like the mix page. If you hold the mouse over a version, it'll display the flavors of that version. So we can switch back over to version 1. Whenever you test is only development, I use it currently to move the window to the size that's required for the video. So this is my development machine. You can move a recipe around. You can move it to the top, as I've already covered in the mix page. Recipe books have a feature called reserved spots. This recipe book has a reserved spots of 10. So I can move this recipe to the top of the list, but it won't go all the way to the top. It'll only go to position 11. So we'll go ahead and move it to the top. And if you want to move it inside your reserved locations, we'll move this to index 3. Running a little slow for some reason. Anyway, I don't need this recipe, so I'm going to move it to my deleted recipe book. I have a few others that I was testing with a little while ago. I'll go ahead and move them over to the deleted recipe book. Next is the recipe queue. Recipe queue is a special recipe book. If you add a recipe to your recipe queue, it creates a reference to the original recipe. So, I don't think I have peachy melon in my queue yet. I mix this a lot. So these are the recipes in my queue. If I wanted to mix breaking fast, go over here to whenever I go to move to top or log this mix, it doesn't actually log this recipe. It'll locate the original breaking fast recipe, which is located in your my recipes recipe book. It'll actually log that one. That way, whenever you double click a recipe in the mix log, it will locate the correct recipe. If you're in your queue recipe book, you can clear the queue. Actually, you can clear it from anywhere. But if you're actually in your recipe queue recipe book, you can actually remove recipes from your queue. I believe that covers all of the design page. Thank you for watching. Check out the other videos.